Everybody come on.
Storytelling and conversations like the one happening tonight with Donna Hylton. She's a formerly incarcerated woman who is from the Bronx and wrote a book after her release in 2012 after 27 years. And this is her homecoming, just coming out here and telling the Bronx her story, which is about incarceration and abuse and resilience, and it's happening right here in the Bronx. So tonight should be very exciting.
As a child of a formerly incarcerated parent, one of the issues Loyana is passionate about social justice and mass incarceration. When you're impacted by the criminal justice system here in America, your life and the lives of those around you, of the people around you, change forever. Donna Hylton's life is different than probably the lives of 90% of us in this room right here, right now, which is why I wanted to invite her back to the Bronx, which is where she's from, to talk about this very important issue that affects this very community. In 1986, Donna Hylton was sentenced to 25 years in prison for the kidnapping and second-degree murder of Thomas Bagley-Arroyo. Donna served that time in Bedford Hills Correctionals, which is the only maximum security prison for women in New York State, and she was released in 2012. Today, Donna has a bachelor and master's degree from Mercy College, and is a women's rights activist and criminal justice reform advocate. Donna speaks publicly about the issues facing incarcerated women and girls and the significant impact that the increase in the female population is having on families, children, and our community. Donna released her first book, A Little Piece of Light, detailing her life before, during, and after prison. So with no further ado, Donna Hylton.
Loud.
Okay. You don't need this. Can y'all hear us? How do you feel about the sound?
Yes.
Okay.
Good sound.
And anyone that's in the back and would like to come up, and please do. How are you? How does it feel to be you today?
Well, the rain made me feel damp, but how does it feel to be me? First of all, thank you guys for coming out in the rain. I know it's not hard for us to come out in the rain, so I appreciate you showing up. It means a lot. It feels really good to be me today. It feels great to be me today because I am older, I'm wiser, I have been through a lot, and I feel like my journey, I'm able to give back and to help others, right? Because I don't think that we understand that we are not the worst things that we've ever done or the worst things that we've ever been involved with, willingly or unwillingly. And we are really beautiful, amazing, brilliant people. And I think it takes things to happen for us to recognize that. And so if I can share that, my journey and the journey of other women that I've met, I do that. It doesn't come easy though, because it comes with some stuff, but it doesn't matter because it's important.
Why don't you tell us what you did this morning before this event?
So, I went back to Bedford Hills Prison. I go there often, as much as I can, with the work that I do. I went back because one of my really good friends, like my best friend, who's the longest serving female, I'll use this word for right now, inmate in New York State prisons, is being released Monday. She was 17 years old. She was 17 years old in 1979. And she had a 50 years to life sentence. And she's being released after 39 years Monday. So I went up to bring her clothes. It was not a good day to go out there, but it's all right, it's done, and I'll be there to pick her up Monday. So,
you're a great friend. And it just occurred to me that we should probably use the microphones for video and filming for those that couldn't join us today.
Sorry.
No worries. So maybe if you want to hold it like here.
Okay. All right, do that. And then I can grab my mic. Careful.
Testing. That's working.
Yes.
Well, you're a great friend for doing that. So you had a very good friend, speaking of good friends, and a mentor, and much deeper than that actually. You used to call her mother, and you met her at Bedford Hills. And before she passed, you promised her that you were going to get some women out of prison, and I think you've gotten 7 women out. Or
right,
so?
is that right? We talked about that the other night. I think the total that I don't talk about, because I think people who follow me and what I like, the work that I do, that's something that I don't talk about. I don't feel like it needs to be spoken about, right? It's obvious, like, I don't know if it's so obvious, but it's obvious what I'm doing, why I'm doing what I'm doing. But in the 6 years that I've been out, I've helped with the release of 7 women. 4 of them I've buried. We'll make that maybe 8 women now. 4 of them I've buried. And what we don't talk about are the conditions that women face when they're inside. And it's not like the men don't face it, but the health concerns and the health issues for women are different than men. And they're not addressed adequately, if at all. And the women, we have come out. I had a stroke 3 years ago. At this time 3 years ago, I almost died. And a lot of the women that I did time with have had strokes, are having strokes. Some just had some just the other day. Have cancer. Some lived through it, the cancer, some did not. But the 4 women that I buried, actually 3 of them that I really physically helped get out had terminal illnesses. And I was able to get them out to the back door with some help and get them placed into a nursing home. And I went to visit them and take care of them. I was telling you earlier, I don't have a savings account because I've been doing this. Like, I feel like it's important because what people don't realize is the majority of women that are in prison don't have family. And so no one's there to take care of them. Just like I went today to go visit, the visiting room was empty. But if I would have went to a men's prison, it would have been full packed.
Yeah.
Like, it would have been packed. So, yeah. So I helped to bury 3, well, I buried 4 of them. And one of them was a young girl who finally was able to get released, and I was like my mentor to her. And she was killed by an abusive boyfriend.
Yeah.
So, right. And she was on parole and he was on parole. And we don't talk about those things. So that's what really makes, it compels me to talk about it, because we don't talk about this violence issue.
Yeah. And we'll talk more about that as we go. You were born in Jamaica. You're an immigrant like I am.
I'm an immigrant.
You were born in Jamaica, and then...
Let's hear for immigrants. Like, nobody said that. Come on.
So you were born in Jamaica, but you grew up on Boynton Avenue in the Bronx, off the 6th train.
Off the 6th Street.
Yes. I also grew up
under the overpass. Over the overpass.
So how did you get to New York City from Jamaica, and what did your childhood look like before prison?
How did I get here? So I was this little girl in Jamaica with my mother, with my friends, which were butterflies and dragonflies and birds and flowers and stuff. Those were my friends. And this couple, this man, who he has family on the island, and I guess, he was visiting at one point, and I was introduced to him as a little girl. I was 5 and a half, 6 years old. Just met him, didn't know anything. And then I met his wife eventually. And then one time when they were together, when they went back to the island, they were having a conversation and talking to me about this magical place. And this magical place was Disneyland at the time. Disney World didn't exist, Disneyland. But I didn't know what Disneyland was, but they described to me a very magical place, a very pretty place that I would like to see. Like
It's the most magical place on earth.
Right.
I used to work there for some time, and they really maintain that. So I can understand your excitement.
Yeah, it was really exciting to me. I was like, oh, really? It sounded so pretty, so I wanted to go. And so they said that I would go see it. And my mother said, yeah, you're going to go with them to go see it. Basically, that's how it happened. So I didn't know that conversation, by the time I got here, I was 7 and a half, meant that I would never go home again to Jamaica, the only home I knew and the only mother that I knew. But they brought me here under that pretense. I never went to Disneyland. They never took me. Never took me. I didn't
So
want to jump ahead.
where did you go instead?
I went inside of a closet every day and was raped every day by the man that would become my father.
Wow.
So that was my Disneyland. It was a nightmare.
Thank you for sharing that as you are and continue to do every day. Can you tell us about your life a few months before going to prison and before your sentence?
So there's a lot of, I know Chanel, you said that you've read my story, you obviously looked me up. There's this narrative that's out there about me that's created, scripted, about me being a kidnapper, torturer, murderer, whatever. And I killed a gay man and all this stuff. That's not true. What's truth is a human being died because of a crime that was committed, a kidnapping. But how I got involved and how I became an unwilling accessory, also a victim in the crime, was that I did agree to a kidnapping. I'm sorry, not a kidnapping, a black man. I didn't know Mr. V, his name is Thomas Migliarolo. I didn't know him, I didn't know anything about it. They said they would give me some money if I would witness a blackmail. And so I said, okay. That's where I went wrong.
Yeah, and you were hanging out with bad friends who...
Well, I didn't have really any friends.
Right.
I didn't have any friends. I was like, by the time I was 19, I did at age of 12, go to school and tell the school counselor that I was being hurt and I couldn't take it anymore. I was being taken into a closet and I needed someone to help me. And I knew my mother wasn't gonna listen to me. My mother at the time, by that time, had become one of the directors for New York State Mental Health, but she didn't do anything to help me. And so I said, well, let me go to school and tell my counselor, because that's what counselors are supposed to do. And I went, I was 12, and out of that scenario, I became the liar. Like I was lying, and my mother knew what to say, knew the words to say, and she used something that really bothered me. And I didn't know why it bothered me as a child. There was a show on at that time, and I think it was called, at that time, Beyond the Walls. It became later The Prisoner of Cell Block H, and it was about these women in prison. They were isolated. It was just very creepy, but they used to watch it, so I watched it. Because I had to watch what they told me to watch. I had to listen on the radio, what they told me to listen to. I had to dress how they wanted me to dress. So I was made fun of, I was picked on a lot. And then I had some fights where thankfully no one bothered me after that. I guess the anger that I had inside came out, to defend myself. So when I told, they didn't believe me or acted like they didn't believe me, but I know now as an adult and as an educated adult that they knew, but nobody wanted to do anything. And my mother knew the words to say because she was a director of mental health in this state, one of them. And so she knew what to say to tell the counselor. And so as a 12-year-old, I was shut down and I was told that I was a liar. And so because no one believed me, I never told again. And I made a series of bad choices. I ran away at 14 because I couldn't take it anymore. And I had received one of the highest scholarships in the boroughs. And I was going to go, I had won a scholarship to one of the most prestigious high schools in the country. But I didn't go because I ran away with a very much older man that said he would help me. And he finally was someone who was listening to me. And as a child, I'm like, okay, somebody's gonna help me. But he became my worst nightmare.
Yeah. You went to prison when you were 17.
No, I had just turned 20.
Okay.
I just turned 20.
Okay.
Yeah.
And in your book you say the ages of women going to prison are much younger than when I went to prison.
Yes.
And that resonates with me because of the work that I do at Rikers Island, where I go and I teach incarcerated young girls. They're not adults yet, so they're between the ages of 16 and 20.
Yeah, I was on adolescence when I went in because I was young.
Yeah, and you know the statistics where it's black and brown women of color that are in prison. You know that, but then to see it with my own eyes, it was pretty surreal. So
yeah, it's so true, and it's still true today. But what's interesting is that when I went to Bedford today
So the woman that I went with, who's my friend's mother, so I call her mother, she said, oh, you know, there's more white women in prison now than there was back then. And I was like, absolutely not. There's more white women in prison, but there are not more white women than there are black and brown women. First of all, the ratio is up to here for black women. They didn't get there yet. Like, they were here and we're here as far as prisons and jails. So they didn't get there within a couple of years.
And I see it all the time now. I essentially have a fellowship that I was awarded through Columbia University, which places me at Rikers Island every Saturday, where I teach photography, art workshops, pop culture and politics, you know, like Kanye West and Donald Trump and kind of what's going on, as well as entrepreneurship in the digital age today. And I see them and they look like my cousin, you know, they look like my neighbor, like the people that I grew up with on the block. Like it could have been me, you know?
Wait, I have to say this. I just want you guys to know. So the Bronx is considered one of the highest $1 million blocks in the country. So the Bronx has, and Queens, actually Queens beats the Bronx, but the Bronx is so high, the ratio of the people from the Bronx who are in jail and in prison, but in Rikers Island right now are from the Bronx, from the 5 boroughs, but the Bronx rate's really high. Like Queens and the Bronx are like this any given day. That's who's in prison, so, in jail. So you look at me, this is who's in jail. This is who's in prison. So when you hear our conversation and our talk about closing Rikers, we're saying it for a reason. They're targeting our neighborhoods. It's been targeted for years and it continues to be targeted. And they lock us up for any given thing. And I'm not saying that people don't do things that are wrong. That's true. It's absolutely true. But there's a way in which to treat people, and there's a way in which to do that. Incarceration has become the answer and the response to every single thing, but only in black and brown neighborhoods.
Yeah. So you have a daughter.
Yes.
And you were pregnant with your daughter before you went to prison.
I was pregnant at 15.
At 15, right. So what's your relationship with your daughter now? I just want to say that I don't know her. Her name is Adrienne, right? I read about her in the book.
Yeah.
I don't know her, but I feel like I do because my father was incarcerated. You know, just that little bit just gives me a lot of insight as to, you know, who she is and really her situation. So what was it like? What I don't know, because I still haven't been able to talk about this with my own father, is what was it like on your end as a parent, as an incarcerated parent with a child?
So it's difficult with my daughter. I was pregnant at 15, and I think if you remember what I said, that the older man that I ran away with became my worst nightmare. So I was 14 years old and he was 24, 23 years old. And she's a product of that. So my daughter is a product of rape. Just as harsh as it sounds, is just what it is. And we've spoken about it, so that's why I talk about it in the book. But I love my daughter. I love my daughter. I love my daughter. But it's difficult. The relationship is difficult. It's difficult when you lock up a parent, especially the mother. It's difficult if you lock up the father, but it's definitely difficult when the mother is locked up and that bond between a child and a mother doesn't form, right? It doesn't exist. And so that's what's wrong with our relationship. So our relationship is a work in progress. I was just with her the other day, and I'll share this. I'm not going to give too much of the book away because I really want y'all to get to my book, please. But my daughter has become addicted to heroin. She has been addicted for a very long time to heroin. And so it's a very difficult situation. It's very delicate and it's very difficult, and I deal with it as best as I can. But I'm not gonna lie, just like I told her Monday, that I'm afraid to put any kind of money in her hands because I feel like I'm gonna get that phone call any given day and say, can you come identify? You know, and just being really honest. And so that makes the relationship difficult.
Yeah, I remember when I first met you, I kept thinking, just going down the list of things that we have in common, you know. So I, like Adrienne, also didn't meet my mom till a later
point in my life, and I was separated from her when I was 2, didn't meet her till I was 18, so that relationship never formed. And it takes some time, you know. I think as a daughter and you as a mother with more or less that kind of like emptiness in that relationship, it takes a while and it never goes away. And I wish I had better advice.
I think it's just a work in progress.
Yeah.
It's just one step at a time.
Yeah.
And it's not gonna come overnight.
Yeah, I think so. So as long as you're willing to dedicate the time now, I guess that we didn't have before, it should be able to, you know, count.
Absolutely.
So there's a part, I'm still on Adrian if that's okay. There's a part in the book where, I'm not giving again too much away, but she comes to you and tells you that she has been raped as well by her father.
No, a friend of her father's.
A friend of her father's. And she says that you try to help her and
Let me rephrase that. It was her uncle. It's not a friend.
So your mother came to visit you in prison, told you that she was raped by her uncle, and then told you that she wasn't going to press charges because she was scared that she wouldn't be believed. So there's this trend, right? Because you weren't believed at school when you went to your school counselor to tell them that this was happening at home. She felt like she wasn't going to be believed. You know, Dr. Christine Basley Ford wasn't believed or isn't believed. Anita Hill isn't believed. So there's
no evidence.
Yeah, right? And then Melania Trump, First Lady, is, you know, on this interview talking about we gotta have hard evidence if we're gonna accuse someone. So obviously the system is a little... Right. That's the word. But this trend just kind of keeps on happening, so...
I don't even know if like we can blame the system or any systems. It's us. Right? We fed into some narrative like that's just BS. Like 11 kids say, let's just call it BS. Because that's what it is. When I was a child and I just came to this country in the 70s, no one believed me, no one chose to believe me, but they know. Like right now, people are saying to me, oh Donna, we knew something was wrong, but we really didn't know what. Like, but those are the young ones, those are the kids like I was, so I can't say anything about the kids. So now I'm hearing the parents of the kids saying, oh well, we didn't really know how bad, and so what's wrong? Like, you know something is going on, you know something is wrong, you know a child is being hurt, you know something is wrong. So why don't we respond to that? Why do we think that it's okay not to speak out or even just pick up a phone and say, hey, there's a child being raped, there's a child being hurt, there's a child that's hungry, there's a child that just needs help. Why do we think like that's not okay to do? Why do we leave our children to fend for themselves just alone? It's wrong. And we do it all the time, and so we do it to adults, because if we don't care about children, we definitely are not going to care about adults.
Yeah. So despite your very violent, so you're going to prison and you're sentenced to 25 years to life for something that you weren't directly involved with, but you take your responsibility for the way that you were involved in. So despite your very violent and lonely past in prison, you started to care for others. You had inmates and friends that suffered of HIV, AIDS, that were dying, a lot of older women, seniors that were sick. And you stood up for yourself when you were about to be sexually attacked by one of the COs. You know, you stood for yourself and you were helping these people out. Where did you find this light, like, and this interest in others?
So, you know, I was an accessory, an unwilling accessory in a crime that was horrible. Right? I couldn't do anything, or felt like, and I couldn't do anything. So there's this interview in Psychology Today that's being used against me. There's parts of the interview that are true, and there's parts that are misquoted, because it was actually not me responding to the question. It was the director of the family violence program, the domestic violence, that came out of the governor's office, the woman that led that program, who was responding for me in certain spaces, right? Because I was still young and I was still not really sure what was going on and didn't understand the totality of the crime itself and my place in it. And so, you know, she responded and said that they were going to kill Mr. Reed anyway, and they were going to kill Donna and the two other girls. Like, we were never going to live. That was something she was trying to drive home at that point, and so she was trying to drive it home with her reporter. And so the reporter wrote it in a way where it was like, I responded to it, absolutely not. Like I was just finding this out myself because the crime was something that was way over. Didn't know Mr. B, didn't know anything about it. But I say that to say that I met a lot of women just like that. Like a lot of, not all of them, but the vast majority of women that I met in Bedford Hills were there because they were unwilling accessories. And they were, they had suffered violence and abuse. And a lot of them didn't know. I mean, I remember some older women, like their grandmothers, and they didn't know their sons had drugs in the basement. And they were selling drugs. They were like big time drug dealers. And the drugs were in the basement, and the money was in the basement. And so the grandmother or the mother is in prison doing time because it's her house or apartment. And this is what our prisons are filled with, right? Not everyone, but quite a bit. So I met a lot of women, young girls like myself who had similar stories. And at the time that I went, just not too long after I went in the 80s, there was an epidemic that hit. And we didn't know what it was. We didn't know it was an epidemic. And women started dying. We would lock in our cells and we'd get up the next morning and the woman that we probably played spades with the night before or whatever, or ate with the dinner table, didn't come out of her room. So we went looking for her and she was dead. And so I'm not a murderer, I'm not a killer, I'm not any of those things. And I started seeing that and it started bothering me. And I vowed never to watch somebody die and not do anything. That's just not something I could do.
I remember the scene of the book because you went to her rescue essentially. And
Absolutely, I picked her up. I picked her up
so slow and they were wondering what to do and kind of, the bystander effect.
Yeah. No, they were afraid. They were met by HIV and AIDS. Like no one knew, so there was this stigma and this fear that if you breathe next to someone, if you breathing the same air next to someone who was infected with the virus, that you were gonna die if you touched a cup or a towel or something. And I was like, I didn't care. Like this woman, this Helen, my friend, was dying in the cell, and I just knew. I didn't know what was wrong, but you could look at her and see. And I was like, so I was arguing with the officer. I cursed him out and everything. That was when I used to curse. Cussed him out, and it was like picture. It was like she's going to a hospital, and so it was things like that started happening. How we created the first HIV/AIDS program that addressed the epidemic in prison. We did that in Bedford Hills.
Yes. Your prison experience seems different than a lot of other people's prison experiences. You got your GED in prison.
No. Oh, yeah, I did.
Yeah, you did.
No, I didn't. No, I had to think about that. I'm old. Wait a minute. So no, I actually got it before. I got that. I had that. Yeah, because I had ran away, so I didn't go take the scholarship. So yeah, I had to.
Well, you found parental figures in prison, which you hadn't had before. You became an ordained minister in prison.
Yeah, I don't talk about that. I know.
Okay, well,
But yes, I'm an ordained minister and a chaplain. So there are two different things. I'm not one of those ministers that like judge or I'm like, I have work too.
Yeah.
But I'm that way. So it was an official that was in charge of my daughter's case. My daughter was raped by her uncle. She had a severe venereal disease that left her sterile. And she had ran away at 14 like me, her mother. And she came to the prison. There was a phone call before she got there saying Adrian was missing. So I didn't know, I was panicking, like what happened? She came to the prison the next day actually with a friend and with the mother of the friend and said, you're the only one that will believe me, and told me she ran away because her uncle raped her, was raping her for months. And no one had taken her to the hospital, no one had done anything. And so the officials in the prison helped me with her, and they assigned a correctional staff person to be in charge of the case. And so that person just happened to be a very abusive person, a man. And he took advantage of that opportunity. And because I was very vulnerable in the moment, because your daughter, how do you picture your daughter going through what she went through? And the story that, the story she told me, and no one had taken her to the hospital. So I had to call, at that time it was BCW and officials. I had to call the state police. I had to do all these things, and they took her to the hospital. And so I found out she had a severe, severe disease that, you know, would possibly leave her sterile, and it seems like she is. And I had to deal with that. So I went back into being that 14-year-old that ran away, that 9-year-old that started being taken into a closet, and that 12-year-old that nobody believed when I went to school and told. And I just I owned all of that. And I was trying to handle it the best way I could. So this man was taking advantage of the situation. And then one day I was like, enough. Like, enough. It was just too much. I just couldn't do it. And so I stood up and I was like, this is it. Like, it's never gonna happen again. And it just has absolutely never happened again. I dare someone to do that.
Yes.
Dare me to do it. No.
So I guess that's when it kind of took a turn in prison for you, and it just kind of became a beautiful experience with the women that you met and that you were with on a daily basis. So after prison, you continued to work on Domestic Violence Survivors Justice Act bill.
DVSJ, like that.
DVSJ, which has a strong perspective on incarcerated women. So it's women that get incarcerated get charged as, you know, or women who murdered accidentally their partner through abuse or self-defense get judged just as someone who murdered someone just.
Yeah. So that bill came, like the woman, Sister Mary, who was the first person, the leading person actually in this country to start talking about domestic violence in women. She created the first alternative to incarceration program in this country, was Green Hope Service, and is Green Hope Services for Women, and then Steps to End Family Violence, and she created that conversation about domestic violence. And she was just like my role model and my mother. And so she was working on this subject and this issue from the 70s. And I met her in actually I met her earlier than when I said in the book, but I started there because that's when I really got to know her. So in 1988, 89, I met the nun who would become my mother. And we have the same heart, and I act like she's still here today because she is. The same heart, the same mind, the same energy, the same focus, the same goal, and which is to shed light about who we incarcerate and how this country incarcerates trauma, because the vast majority of women and girls that are incarcerated because of the violence and abuse that they've been subjected to in their lives.
Right.
A lot of the women are not guilty of doing anything. They are accessories. They are not guilty. And the ones that have killed because they were being severely abused did that in a moment where their minds just snapped, and it was fight or flight. And so they responded, and it doesn't make it right, but it makes it understandable.
Yeah, like Cynthia Brown.
Exactly.
Who's on trial for first degree murder for self-defense.
And we're trying to see if we can get so she did get her sentence, reduced and all that. But that was a 14-year-old in Ohio that killed her father because he was severely beating her mother almost to death at this one point, but it was going on for so long. And it resonates so strongly because, it just resonates, right? And people are saying, oh, well, calling her all kinds of names. She should have known better. She was a child, and she felt like she had to protect her mother, herself, and her brother, because this was a man that was volatile. Really, beyond volatile. So she snapped. She didn't know what else to do. But we don't look at the root causes of stuff. We just incarcerate to incarcerate. We don't look at why people have gone to prison or get to where they're at. We don't look at why people have all of a sudden have this mental illness, or even if we don't even look to see if it existed. When I refer to this man who, I don't know if you guys heard in the news, but this black guy who always steals buses or trains because he likes them. And he's been doing this all his life. And he's like 40-something years old. You're just testing him to see if something's wrong, and you just happen to find out that he's autistic. And so he has this this little fascination with buses and trains and stuff. So he was stealing them. It's a crime, but he was doing it because he's autistic. But you never tested him for that. You never tested him for that until some people started saying, well, something's a little off here, like whatever. But you never paid any mind to that. So now you want to lock him away forever in a mental health facility because he's too dangerous, because he'll steal buses and trains. Okay, finally you recognize he has mental illness. Like,
You mentioned a friend of yours that you saw on the subway here in New York one day that you were locked up with, and she was, strung out, dirty, just kind of, sleeping, homeless, clearly.
she had no shoes on her feet. She had on these pants that were like leggings, but they would come up to here. She had on this tank shirt, I see her right in my head, with this spaghetti strap, and she was like, just like this on the thing, and there was a bag next to her, and I saw a hospital band on her wrist. But at first I didn't know it was her. I was walking by like we do homeless people all the time. I know some of y'all done it, right? Every day. But we don't pay attention. And something said, wait a minute, like I knew her, I heard her voice, and I felt it, and I turned and I looked and I saw her, I was like, I know her. And so I just had to stop and go over to her. So I went over to her, and as I was walking over to her, she was catatonic. You could see that she was in a state. And as I walked over closer, she was like, come around, she just looked at me and she recognized me, and she was like, Donna Hylton? I never thought you'd get out. So, she was aware in the moment, and so I started talking to her, and I found out that they released her from Bellevue. She was in the Bronx at the Franklin Avenue shelter. They took her to Bellevue, and from Bellevue they just released her. They didn't even care. They didn't even know. She was nowhere near the Bronx. I don't know how she got to Brooklyn, and it just let her go. But what I realized in the moment, even prison, she was better taken care of, even though there's really no sufficient mental health treatment there. But at least she was able to eat. At least she has some shoes on her feet. She was able to bathe. She was clean. We took care of her. We knew she had a little mental health. She was working with me in one of the crews that I created, to fix the prison up. So, just to make sure she was okay, because we took care of each other. But out here, we don't pay attention to each other. We walk right by each other like, oh well.
So clearly, prison, jails, and detention centers do not work.
No, they don't work. Well, are they gonna work? We're locking up people that have drug addiction. There's no drug addiction treatment in prison. Like, it's not happening. That's not a drug treatment facility. You know what I mean? It's prison. It's jail. There's no mental health treatment in prison or jails because it's prison and jail. It's not mental health. So they replace mental health facilities with prisons. But who? Black and brown people. That doesn't happen in white communities. I've been across the globe. Across the globe. I was just in Santa Barbara, and I told them, I know that you think that this nice, ideal sea town that's predominantly white, if not all white, is just safe and sound, but it's not. It's not. Because if we don't look outside and see what's going on outside and around us, then what is going on outside and around is going to infiltrate where we're at.
Right now you're working on the bailout plan, which is going to bail out girls and women who couldn't afford bail for all this time, and they were sitting at Rikers all this time just hanging out because they couldn't afford their bail.
Yeah, it's kind of radical, but so today, actually I got an update yesterday. So right now we have bailed out about 60, probably right now it might be close to 80 women that we've bailed out, and we're gonna bail out the first, I didn't get the word yet. First young person, first juvenile, because we're focused, the bailout is focused on bailing out women and young people. A lot of them are in there for like $400 or $100, $1,000. There are some with higher bails, but the argument is that, oh well, because they've done something wrong, that's why they're there, it doesn't matter. But like I was speaking the other night at the Apollo, we had that event. I don't know if you guys saw the Global Citizen concert where the bailout actually was introduced to the world globally on the stage. But we had an event before that, and I spoke about it, and I said that, you know, you talk about the communities and that you're afraid, like people who've done violent crimes or allegedly done something violent going to come out. But the bottom line is people are in jails because they can't afford the bail. I don't know if anyone in here knows about Khalif Browder, but it's majority of the stories are just like that. We don't want any more Khalif Browders because you can't pay $100 bail, because you can't pay $400 bail. Who has $100 most given days? We don't. Let's be honest, we don't. $400, $1,000, we don't. But you don't mind if a serial killer, someone that was a known serial killer, who happened to be white, and a millionaire can pay $1 million bail and get out. That's fine. You don't feel any way about that. Like, just fine. Oh, he can pay his bail. It's fine. You know, and I don't like to use that, but sometimes I have to get really like in their face about that. Yeah. But that's fine. But if we're saying our people can't spend can't afford $200 to be allowed, and they have not been convicted or even nothing is saying that the person is guilty. So a person is sitting inside, innocent till proven guilty, but they're automatically guilty because when you go to court or whatever it is from jail, you go in with shackles and all these guards and all this stuff, so all people are looking at that, and we assume automatically, oh, this person is guilty because they're coming in shackled down with armored guards and all this stuff, and the person probably didn't anything. Like Khalif allegedly stole a backpack? Seriously?
So to start wrapping up, because we're not going to give y'all no more, because y'all definitely have incentive to go buy this book now.
Can't wait for the book.
You first arrived in the U.S. on the false notion that you were going to Disneyland, and you didn't, but a few months you did for the very first time. So I couldn't help but connect that to the possibility of forgiveness in such a heavy.
I have to say this. I don't want you guys to leave without really understanding that every single person that has ever done anything to harm me in my life, I have absolutely forgiven. Absolutely forgiven. I have no anger, have no hate, I have nothing but absolute love. And when we recognize that we can love people for the humanity, for them being just human beings like us, we don't have to like what someone does, the act or the behavior they do, but we could love people for being people, then we will get someplace in this world. And that's why I do what I do.
So every time I look at people in the street, or you know, I feel uncomfortable with someone like bumping me or something, I always look at people and myself as in a culmination of absolutely everything that we've been through, because we're the ones that have done it for so long up until this point. So how do you stay up, and how do you stay focused, and how do you not get dragged down when it's all kind of happening in your head and you're like, no, I have life, I'm here. What are some of the things you do, I guess, in your daily life?
I have to say this. So 3 years ago, right at this point, I had a stroke. I almost died. I was at the governor's house, in front of the governor's house, protest that you're getting my people out, right? And I had a stroke and I almost died. And it was that one. Like, there were many moments and many aha moments, right? But it was that moment in my life 3 years ago that really drove it home for me that we are nothing but love. Nothing that is here, nothing that was created, nothing in the universe did not happen without love. Nothing can be created without love. Absolutely nothing can be recreated without love. And so I keep that in me, I hold that, and I know that we are better than the worst things that we've ever done. We are more than what we just look at in each other. We are more than that. We get caught up into the world because we've become of the world as opposed to being in the world. So when I talk to people, I try to bring them back to say, you're just in here doing the work. You're just here for a reason. We're here with each other, right, to make this better and just to learn. Life is experience. It's about experiencing, and once you learn, you move on, hopefully. If you don't, it'll happen again. But that doesn't mean that we have to hold people in such a space or a place where we condemn them and we feel they have no redemptive qualities, that they're horrible, they're ugly. There's no such thing as a throwaway person. We are not throwaway people. We don't throw people away. It just doesn't make sense. So I try to really bring that home to people that we're gonna do some stuff. We're gonna make mistakes. We're gonna do some ugly, messy stuff. But does that mean you throw the person away? Everybody is capable of doing and being better. Everybody is capable of being redeemed. And so I look at people, I walk through life and say, okay, you bumped me, okay. But doesn't mean that you're a horrible human being or a horrible person. So I hold on to that.
Yeah. What's your advice to young girls in abusive situations currently?
What's my advice to young girls in abusive situations?
In all ages, as you know.
That we are, and I'll be that young girl again, we are not what others say we are. We are not who others define us to be. We don't have to be enslaved to anyone. We are amazing, brilliant, beautiful people and women. And we have the power in ourselves. Don't let anyone ever take your voice or your power. It's yours. Own it. Do it.
I wanted to bring you here to the Bronx because it seems to be a cycle. You know, this happened to you, and then it happened to your daughter, and who knows when it stops happening, right?
In the Bronx. In the Bronx.
So that's why I wanted, you know, to bring you here and share this. Yes, it is.
My hood. It's my hood.
Finally, what else, before Q&A, what else can we do to, aside from talk about it and do things like this? Because once you hear about stuff like this, you just don't forget it. You pass it on and you talk about it. If you have family who's incarcerated, it's like you're incarcerated, so you talk about it and that's what happens. But what else aside from talking about it?
Yes, you know this is an action call, right?
Yeah.
So my colleagues are here from Cantal Center for Health, Equity, and Justice, which I'm the Senior Justice Fellow. So I have my amazing organizer here with some cards, and so we ask you to sign them and just to be available, because we have these conversations and these campaigns going on right now, and we know the legislative session is starting, and so we have parole issues that are going on, bail issues that are going on, we have the domestic violence bill that I'm working on that's going on. We have so many issues, and it does affect the Bronx. And your voice needs to be heard. Your voice needs to be in it. You don't want somebody to tell you what should be going on in your neighborhood, but you don't want anyone telling you who shouldn't be in your neighborhood, because what they're telling you is you don't need to be in your neighborhood. Don't look at me and say, oh, I don't belong here. I am you. You are me. We are the same people. And so we don't bring our voices together as a community collectively, then we won't have our community anymore. And so allow us to tell you the truth as opposed to somebody else telling you a narrative to make you afraid, to make you say, oh, I don't want that, because they don't tell you the truth. Allow us to tell you the truth of what's going on and what you need to do to speak up, to stand up, to vote. It's important that you vote. We are in some really dark times right now, and you people are being told a story that is not true. Don't look at each other and look at each other in anger and hate and, oh, well, you're doing this and you're not doing that. It doesn't matter. We are here together. This is our community. Let's make it remain our community. So join us at the top.
So I want to thank you for being here today with me.
All have the light in us. We are light. And if we just really understand that, nothing can hold us back. We won't have to really be stuck in those dark places. It's where if light exists, darkness doesn't.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing your own piece of light into this world through this book. And by coming here, Amazon.com, A Little Piece of Light, and also loyalnana.com to learn more and continue to be a part of this.
Yeah. Good girl. Love her.